Krista makes the invitation to conspire and has everyone increase their commission rates to 10% within her brokerage. Is she going to the big house? Yes. What about Loretta?
Oh, she's gone. She should have been packing.
Okay. What about Josh? Now remember, Josh did not increase his commission rates, right? But he stayed throughout. What about Barb?
I just drank it.
Barb steals the booze, right? So she doesn't commit the Josh problem of staying during the conversation that follows the invitation to conspire. She's not there. Then she goes back to the brokerage, and what does she do within her brokerage?
Intense.
She states that they are going to increase commission rates, right? We're going to start in 6 months having a slow increase. We're not jumping to 10%. Barb, why did you raise your commission rates? Everybody else is doing it, right? This leads to the conversations that some agents have with their sellers where they say, this is the commission rate, it's standard. Is that language we use? Because when people start saying everyone is charging this or it is standard, what is the appearance? We have all agreed. So when we look at kind of that type of behavior, that's where we have the issue, right? She's going to change in the future to follow the going trend. We need to be able to demonstrate, why did we make the change in our business model? And then we want to be able to document why that change was made. Now in U.S. versus Foley, nobody actually went to prison. They just paid huge fines. And so I, of course, am reading why they didn't go to prison. It was so great. You had one guy with a heart condition. And then you had folks that argued that they wouldn't be able to make the money to pay the fine if they were in prison. That's phenomenal. I love it. When we look at who's in trouble, I want you to keep in mind that violating federal law frequently leads to losing your license, right? Your real estate license. And if you lose your license, it's really hard to get into another industry that requires a license because you have to disclose that you have lost your license in a previous career choice. We start with the charged conspiracy, and when we look at that charged conspiracy, it's that agreement that our four had. Now, it's an understanding, a meeting of the minds between at least two competitors, and their purpose is to restrain trade. Were my four at the dinner who all agreed in some manner, or my three who all agreed to increase their commission rates, are they involved in that conspiracy? Yes, they all took steps to increase their commission rates to meet what was discussed. But then we've got Josh, and Josh falls within the agreement. The agreement is what constitutes the offense. An overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy is not needed. So when we look at that agreement, this is when someone might say, you know, Garrett is a pain in the rear. You know how we should take care of Garrett? We're just going to stop working with Garrett. And then Kent is going to nod, and he's going to say, you are absolutely right, Trista, that's what we should do. Now, Kent might be saying that just because he doesn't want to offend me, or maybe he's hitting on me. I'm really not sure. But when he responds in that manner, or when he does the uh-huh and nods, then we have he is part of that agreement, right? So when we look at the defendant knowingly joined the charged conspiracy, or they intended to agree, it's not just mere knowledge of the conspiracy. That's not what needs to be necessary. Instead, it's that you cannot demonstrate that actions you took following were not due to the conversation that followed the invitation to conspire. Does that make sense? How many of you look at this and you're like, but all of them are selling real estate in Idaho, so we're not involved in interstate commerce? How many of you are like, yeah, no? Because how many of you advertise across state lines, meaning you have a website? You're involved in the flow of interstate commerce. How many of you have ever worked with a relocation service? Flow of interstate commerce. How many of you work with a client who's moving out of state? Flow of interstate commerce. Anybody moving in state and you're working with them? flow of interstate commerce. Any of you taking money coming from a federal program? Flow of interstate commerce. So when we look at the way the Sherman Antitrust Act, at first when we just read that language that it has to be among several states or foreign nations, we say, yeah, not us, but absolutely it involves any time that we are trying to restrain trade. So the reason I call this Miss Americas is when you watch, how many of you watch the Miss America pageant? Exactly. Is it Kareen? So Kareen's like, I have watched Miss Congeniality, and Miss Congeniality, there is no better example of a Miss America than that which existed in Miss Congeniality, where you have folks that give an answer to a question, it has absolutely nothing to do with the question, but they have memorized it in advance and it's delivered with a huge smile. When we look at the Miss America, this is, I have heard an invitation to conspire, I am getting out of the conversation. So I had a woman once in one of the first classes I ever taught. She's like, Trista, I've got Miss America. And she stood up and she's, Josh, what you are proposing is a violation of the federal law and you should be in prison. And I really look forward to working with your clients while you're there. And I was like, she had the snaps and everything. I'm like, wow, that's a lot to take in. And I kept thinking, how awkward is that going to be when I have told Josh, you belong in prison, you felon. And then I have to call him the next day and say, ooh, I've got a doozy of an offer headed towards you. Working with him is going to be tough because I've called him out and told him that you were just a horrible human, right? Josh not doing well in prison. The colored socks. An issue. So the Miss America is, how do I extricate myself in a way where I can still call you in the morning and tell you I have an offer we need or a deal we need to work on. It's going to be complicated, but I have extricated myself so that nobody can allege that I've been a part of this. So when I was in law school, I always say that someone stole the booze because my law school professor was like, here's what you tell your clients. Nobody remembers who leaves the party at the end. We all remember who's there at the beginning of the party. Nobody remembers who's there at the end of a party. So if we have a conversation at the party that's antitrust, leave in a way that everyone will remember. And everyone will remember if you take their alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
So steal their booze, spill your wine, get in a fight with someone, flip a table, but leave in a manner that everyone remembers you left. So you can call them out and say, hey, that sounds like an antitrust violation, where this is the, I'm not comfortable continuing this conversation. I'm concerned it may be an antitrust violation. Then we have the, I'm leaving. Before this discussion goes any further. Everyone remembers that you have left. And then my favorite, I have very sensitive skin. The prison uses cheap soap. It is not going to work out for me. I'm leaving.